Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're not just looking at a character, we're sort of standing at the very edge of the known universe. For the classical Chinese text, Investiture of the Gods.
Or Feng Shunyang, yeah.
Exactly. We're looking at the one figure who really represents the absolute power ceiling for everyone in that conflict. We're talking about Kong Xuan.
The unbeatable peacock.
He really is. We've got a great stack of material on him, and it all points to this one guy who just shatters every assumption you have about power rankings. So our mission today is pretty straightforward.
But profound.
Right. We want to uncover his identity, which is astonishing to say the least. We need to get into how his power actually works, this nearly invincible ability, and then the big one. Why someone this strong isn't even on the final list, the Feng Shui Bang.
He was too big for the system, and that's the perfect way to frame it. Kong Xuan is such an anomaly. You have to study him to understand the boundaries of the whole conflict. I mean, up until he shows up, the war is basically a struggle between these two big factions, right? The Chan and Zhou teachings. But when Kong Xuan enters the scene, the problem becomes, it becomes unsolvable. It forces the guys at the very top, the saints, to look completely outside the game for a solution.
He's the final boss before the game just crashes.
That's it.
Okay, that sets the stage perfectly. Let's start with his origin, because this is the part that really blew my mind. It's the root of everything. The sources keep calling him a figure of extremely important weight and top-tier strength.
And that strength is purely hereditary. This isn't some guy who meditated on a mountain for 1,000 years. His pedigree just puts him on a completely different plane.
So, here's the reveal. The texts state very clearly that his mother was the ancient divine bird, the phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the very first peacock ever to exist between heaven and earth. He's the original.
And that lineage changes everything. When the sources talk about him, they don't use the normal words for demons or monsters. Wow. They called him an innate exotic species, a dutra, or a primeval strange bird, a duvrai.
What did that actually mean for the listener?
It means this isn't power he earned. It's inherent. It comes from the very beginning of creation. You have to think of him as like a piece of the primeval cosmos just walking around.
So is this someone who just skipped the whole cultivation path, or is his power just fundamentally different?
It's the second one, but that implies the first. Think of it like this. Everyone else starts with a certain amount of spiritual energy, and they build on it with techniques, treasures, whatever. Kong Xuan. He started out as a fundamental law of nature.
Wow.
His power is just an expression of his being, and that makes him incredibly resistant to the rules of magic and physics that everyone else has to follow.
And the status, it gets recognized later, right?
Oh, absolutely. What's fascinating is how his legend gets absorbed. He becomes associated with the Peacock Great Bright King Bodhisattva in Buddhism.
Which isn't an accident.
No way. It tells you that his significance was always seen as something that transcended the simple Shang and Zhou war. His status was cosmic from the start.
Okay, so that foundation, the phoenix's son, this primeval bird, is the key to his defining ability. Which brings us to the reason he was so feared. The five-colored divine light.
Yes. The Thule, this is the whole conversation right here. It's an innate divine power, a natural part of him. And it's defined by 5 colors: blue, yellow, red, white, and black.
And these colors aren't just for show, are they? They map onto something much deeper.
Exactly. The 5-color divine light is literally the embodiment of the 5 elements theory. You've got wood, earth, fire, metal, and water.
The building blocks of the Taoist cosmos.
Right. And because pretty much everything, treasures, weapons, magic, is made from those elements, his light can just neutralize it, absorb it, brush it away. That's why the sources call it almost universally insoluble. It's almost without a solution.
So we're not talking about like low-level magic. The texts say it can brush away all magical treasures in the world.
All of them. It doesn't matter how powerful they are, who made them. Think about it. Most of the big fights in Feng Shui are battles of magical treasures.
It's all about who has the better artifact.
Exactly. So if you can just negate your opponent's ultimate weapon, well, the fight's over before it starts. And it does more than that. It can capture people. It can scoop up entire armies of soldiers, trap immortals. It's not a weapon. It's just this absolute force of neutralization.
Okay, but hold on. If it's that perfect, why didn't other characters with elemental powers do something similar? Or even the saints? Was there a limitation on it?
That's a great question, and it goes right back to his birthright. Lots of immortals use the 5 elements, sure, but Kong Xuan is pretty much the only one whose body is a primeval manifestation of them. For anyone else, Trying to channel all 5 at once would take a huge amount of energy and focus.
Tough for him.
It's as easy as breathing. The only limit is, I guess, the sheer power input required, and no one else has that kind of innate spiritual battery, that phoenix lineage, to pull it off so perfectly.
Let's look at the combat record, because it's just devastating.
It really is.
His light defeated and captured dozens of major generals, people like Hong Jian and Lei Zhenzi, but the really crucial part is that it brushed away the treasures of multiple golden immortals from the Chan teachings.
These are the top disciples, the best of the best. And we're not talking about, the B team. Kong Xuan was facing the heavy hitters.
What about Yang Jian? He's supposed to be the ultimate problem solver.
Totally helpless. He has that demon-eliminating mirror which can see the true form of almost anything. He couldn't see Kong Xuan's true form. He was just stumped. And Neza, with all his speed and powerful artifacts, same thing, completely ineffective.
But the real test comes when he faces the leadership. He goes up against Randang Taoist.
A huge figure, basically one of the top military commanders for the Chan teachings. And Kong Xuan just brushes his treasure away and forces him to retreat in total disarray.
To put that in perspective, that's like the chief operating officer of the whole army just sprinting out the back door.
Without his wallet, yeah. It was a complete humiliation. And then there's Liu Ya Taoist, another incredibly powerful and mysterious figure. He didn't even try to fight, he just fled.
Wow.
That tells you everything you need to know. His power worked against everyone below the level of a saint.
And the result was that Jian Zia, the commander of the whole Zhu army, was just stuck. He had to hang the official no battle sign outside his camp.
A total military stalemate, caused by one guy.
And that complete paralysis brings us to Jinji Ridge. He wasn't just winning fights, he was guarding the only door they could go through.
He was the roadblock, a literal one.
Exactly. Let's talk about his impact on the campaign. He was assigned to guard Jinji Ridge. This wasn't some random outpost. It was the most critical military barrier for the Shang dynasty. If Zhu can't take Jinji Ridge, the war is over for them.
And he turned it into the ultimate choke point. He became, as the text says, West Key's greatest nightmare. He just repeatedly stopped Jiamzi's advances, and the elite golden immortals just kept losing to him.
You have to imagine the psychological toll. Losing your best generals, your best weapons, to a power you can't even comprehend.
It would be demoralizing.
So what would have happened if he hadn't been there?
Oh, the Zhu army would have rolled through Jinji Ridge in a few days. The war would have been over so much faster. Kong Xuan basically bought the Shang dynasty a huge amount of time and completely paralyzed the entire Zhu campaign. He was an individual whose power just exceeded the game's operating system.
Which is the key point for you, the listener. During this phase of the war, Kong Xuan was the power ceiling, the Weli Zelian. If you're playing by the normal rules of the sanctioned universe, no combination of generals or immortals could touch him. He was the wall.
So that brings us to the big question. If he was unbeatable inside the system, how did they finally beat him?
Because the war did move on, eventually. And this is where it all pivots. The key fact here is that Kong Xuan was not defeated by the Chan teachings. He wasn't beaten by the Zhu army.
The solution had to come from somewhere else entirely.
It had to come from the Western teachings. He was defeated by a saint, Zhunti Taoist.
Which is basically the system administrator stepping in to rewrite the code.
Right.
The fact that a saint had to get involved shows you how powerful Kong Xuan was. Zhunti had to personally show up, which is a huge deal, and reveal his golden body.
And he didn't just use any old weapon. He brought out the Seven Treasures Wonderful Tree. Why that specific artifact?
Because it's a treasure of a similar primal power. It's said that it can brush away all 5 elements and all 5 senses. It's a perfect counter. It's a saint using a saint-level rule to negate an impossibility that existed on a lower level.
The fact they had to pull out one of their ultimate weapons just to neutralize him.
It speaks volumes. It really does.
Okay, and this is where his story gets really unique. Because he's not killed, he doesn't end up on the Fengshen Bang.
Nope. He completely skips the normal post-war process.
Most characters either die and become a god on the list, or they survive and keep their status. He gets a third option.
He was converted or saved. He essentially gets drafted by the Western teachings. It's like an escape clause from the whole war.
But, some might say he was only upgraded because he lost to the saint. Was it really an upgrade, or was it a glorified surrender?
That's a fair question. It's a bit of both, but I would argue it's mostly an upgrade in terms of his cosmic destination. Yes, he was beaten, but his fate shows immense respect for his power.
How so?
Well, instead of being stuck in the Fengshen system as some kind of minor deity with a job, he was sealed as the Peacock Great Bright King and became Zunti's personal mount.
Okay, which is a pretty high status position.
It's the highest you could get for a figure like him. He's now in direct, constant proximity to a saint. He was just too powerful to be a bureaucrat god, and he doesn't just disappear. He comes back later to help fight the Tongtian cult master.
So his final status is...
It's unique. He's in this special tier that's below the saints, but above all other immortals. He wasn't defeated and punished. He was taken off the board and given a new, higher destiny. The rules of the game were changed just for him.
So, to wrap this all up, the key takeaways for you listening at home, Kong Xuan's legacy is defined by three things.
Yeah.
First, his pedigree, the Phoenix's son.
Primal power.
Second, his weapon, the five-color divine light, which was basically an unsolvable cheat code because it mastered the five elements. And third, his fate.
Mm.
He wasn't beaten in the traditional sense. He was upgraded out of the system.
Yeah, he was playing in a completely different league. He really represents that intersection of raw, inherent power and ultimate destiny in the Fengshen story. He's confirmation that, while incredible strength can beat almost anything, it still has to yield to the highest cosmic authority, to the saints.
Exactly. And that leaves us with a final thought for you to chew on. If Kong Xuan's power was so immense that it required a saint figure who almost never intervenes directly to step in and use a system from outside the war, what does that really tell us about the hidden hierarchies governing the Fengshen universe? And more importantly, how many other characters might have been out there, also operating outside the standard rankings, just waiting for their own saint-level event to define their true destiny?
Something to think about.
It is. Until our next deep dive.